My name is Yvette. I'm an ER nurse. And 6 years ago, I had a cold. Well, it was like allergies, so I decided to take 3 over-the-counter, benign over-the-counter medications. It was like Benadryl, Zyrtec, and some other over-the-counter medication. I've taken these medications all the time. I took the recommended dose, and I drank them. And it's funny because when I drank it, as soon as I swallowed it, I was like, I don't think I should have taken them all at once. And then I thought, no, I think I'll be fine. So I took the recommended dose for each one, and I even looked them up and made sure I didn't double dose, make sure that they were all different medicines, and I thought, that's all right. And plus, being an ER nurse, I've seen people take overdoses all the time, and they take, an exceptional amount of medication, and all you would do is monitor a lot of the times, and here I'm taking the recommended dose of each one. So that was it. Usually when I take medicine, like the Benadryl, it usually kind of knocks me out, and here I took those other 2. So I just said a quick prayer, just to make sure everything is all right, and that would be it, and I went to sleep. And then that's all I pretty much remember. Being an ER nurse, I know all the staff in the ER, I know all the EMTs, I know all the paramedics. So all I could say is after all that stuff happened to me, that they told me their accounts of what happened. I was flatlined, my husband was doing CPR on me. He told me that when he went up that night, that he laid next to me and that he heard me do a loud snore. And that he thought he never heard me snore before, and that he said that I kind of got up and said I couldn't breathe, and when he walked around the bed, that I went to stand up and collapsed. And it was then that he grabbed me and brought me to the floor and realized, he put the light on, he realized that I wasn't breathing or anything, so he started CPR right away. Now, a month prior, his job required him to get his CPR certification, so everything was fresh in his mind. By then he shouted for my daughter, who was 9 years old at the time, to call 911. So he was doing CPR while all that was going on. When the paramedics arrived, or the EMTs arrived, I think that the police got there first, because the police officer that I also knew said that when he saw me that he thought that I was gone already. So he walked out and told the EMTs, I think she's gone. So they went up. They're the ones who called for paramedics. Paramedics went up and they hooked me up and saw that there was not a shockable rhythm. So they initially pushed drugs. They were continuing the CPR, and they pushed drugs until they got a shockable rhythm. And then once they did that, then they got a pulse. But when they brought me to the emergency room, they told the charge nurse, who was also friends of my family, this one's going to be a pronouncement. That's what they told. They thought that once they got me in the room that they were just going to work me, and then I wasn't going to be viable, and that was going to be the end of that. They didn't see any hope for me at all. I wasn't even stable enough to transfer over to Cooper Hospital at that very moment, because I kept going into cardiac arrest. So they just had to get me just stable enough to go to the ICU there in Vineland until they could get me stable enough to fly me over via helicopter to Cooper. So I kept going in and out of rhythms that were unstable until then. Once they got me in a somewhat stable rhythm and they were able to fly me over, which one of the nurses that was also friends with my friend said that I also coded in the helicopter going over to Cooper Hospital. They were sending phone calls, please pray for her, and one of them was to Kathleen McCarthy. During that time, like all my friends who were also ER nurses were in the room too, and they know that some of the drugs that were hanging were some of the drugs, like one of them is Levophed, And Levophed is a drug that they used to teach us in school. It sounds terrible. They used to teach us Levophed, leave them dead, because it was like the last drug that you would use when someone was dying. So they saw the Levophed hanging. And even still, they looked to the ICU nurse and they said, so, what does that mean? And the ICU nurse, knowing that they were ER nurses, looked at them and said, girls, you know what this means. One of the ICU nurses pulled one of my friends aside and said, we would really appreciate it if maybe one of you girls could talk to her husband about gift of life, the organ donation to her husband. So people were praying, and thank God Kathleen had got there, and she also prayed. I know when I woke up, I know my dad was there, I know my mom was there, my husband was there. And my dad couldn't help but to ask, did you see the light? I felt like there was really strong love in the room, and it was coming off of people. It was coming off of, it was like, when my eyes were closed, I felt like there was all these people in the room, but when I opened them, it was just a few of us. But I felt like there was everybody, all these people, and it was so weird. And sometimes I would sit up and look, because I felt this love. It was like love. I don't know how else to describe it. Even when they moved me out of that ICU room and put me on this step-down bed, I still felt that love. It's real. Even when I went home, I still felt it. It's an intense feeling of love. All I have to say is just, God is real, and His miracles, they are real. It's not something that's made up. I believe God was there. There is power in His name. And I'm so thankful that Kathleen came up and prayed